So welcome to the latest webinar in our Engineerica Education Keynote series. We are very pleased to be bringing you this complimentary presentation. For those of you who are new to us, Engineerica specializes in academic center management systems for higher education, and you might be familiar with our software applications, including Academia and AcuCampus. And I do want to give a special welcome to any Engineerica clients who are joining us today. I want to make sure everybody knows about our in-person conference. We just had our 2025 event in Orlando near our company headquarters. It was a huge success, lots of great speakers, including Keynote Sandra McGuire, and we are now planning for 2027. This is going to be February of 2027. If you'd like to help us plan the event, we do have a survey going on right now that if you are able to fill it out, you will be entered into a raffle to win a free registration. So I'm going to just paste that link in the chat real quick for you all. There we go. All right. And for those of you who are not yet clients, I do just want to make sure that you know that we do offer a complimentary trial of our most popular center management system, Academia. The conference, by the way, is for both Academia clients and non-clients. We do offer a general professional development track. But if you are interested in learning about our software management, our center management software, this gives you the opportunity to use Academia for an entire semester risk-free to see if it helps make management of your center and data collection easier. And if you're interested, you can send me an email at rachelc@engineerica.com, and I will paste that link into the chat as well. And finally, without further ado, I just want to introduce you to our keynote series and to this month's speaker. We started this series for our clients and our contacts who wanted to learn more about best practices and trends in higher education. Each month we feature a distinguished speaker to talk about hot topics in the academic support field. We are going to be taking a break in January, as we usually do, because we know that first week folks are coming back and we don't want to lose that rhythm for you all or rush you back in. So next webinar is anticipated to be in February. We will send out an announcement when we are able to begin promotion on that. So keep an eye out on your emails and our social media channels. And a quick introduction to myself. I am Rachel Cook. I am a client success manager with Engineerica. I was previously a learning center manager for 6 years, and I have been with Engineerica in my current role for going on 5 years now. And like you all, I am very passionate about higher education and student success. I also have with me my colleague, Mark Kehoe. He is one of our technical support specialists. He is here as my backup and also to help with any technical issues that might come up. All right, now I am pleased to introduce you to this month's speaker. Dr. Samantha Tackett is faculty at Florida State University, where she serves as the director of the Proactive Referral and Engagement Program and assistant director of the Academic Center for Excellence in the Division of Undergraduate Studies. In these roles, Dr. Tackett directs the university's early notification process, teaches academic recovery curriculum, consults with the university's teaching faculty, and manages student success staff. She enjoys using her doctorate in educational psychology and learning and cognition and her master's in instructional systems and learning technologies to teach, provide support, and mentor the research of both undergraduate and graduate students. Dr. Tackett delights in mentoring researchers and teaching assessment, cognitive psychology, educational psychology, and educational technology and student success and recovery curricula in traditional and online contexts. Her research interests include students' development of skills to improve their academic recovery, motivation, engagement, persistence, and resilience, and the academic experiences and retention of first-generation and underrepresented student populations within American educational systems. Dr. Tackett has published in national and international journals and books and collaborated with colleagues and students to present research at regional, national, and international conferences. We are so excited to be hosting her today. And Dr. Tackett, Samantha, I am going to go ahead and hand the reins over to you.
Okay, so that's thank you everyone for attending. I had to start out with a beautiful picture of our sunny Florida. I'll be honest with you, it is not sunny right now. It's overcast, but I imagine the people up north are saying boo-hoo since it's only a balmy 65. So, and everyone's talking about it being so cold. But I am from Florida State University. My position is housed in the Academic Center for Excellence. It's our tutoring and student support center on campus. And my position is also within the Division of Undergraduate Studies, which is interesting considering that I do also work with students that I'll talk about in this in this webinar, I'll talk about the students that I work with in a course that's primarily for students in the upper division outside of Division of Undergraduate Studies. So my topic today is using innovative approaches to basically build a course, build programming to help students who are experiencing academic recovery, academic struggle, and we want to help them recover from that from our institutional positions. I'm going to start out with a poll to ask you about which type of higher education institution that you serve.
All right, let me just get this poll launched here.
I think the options were 2-year, 4-year public, 4-year private, and professional/other.
Right. Yep. And we are seeing lots of people voted. It has pretty much slowed down, so I think I'll give it another like 5 seconds, and then we'll close it out. All right, let's go ahead and share those results. So we are looking at very evenly split across the first 3 options, only 5% professional or other. So very, very evenly split.
Across the 2-year, 4-year public, 4-year private.
Okay,
got it. Thank you. All right, that'll help me. Okay, so just to quickly cover where I plan to go throughout the webinar is starting out with context and purpose so that you understand the university that I am situated within, and also the influences to my course design, where that came from, and the lessons learned that I have accrued from piloting the course. And then I'll also share the revisions that I've been making to the course. And the course is what I have the most control over, and the dean's offices I'll refer to in just the next slide here. They have more control over any required sessions with students from their college. So I'll focus a large portion of what I'm talking about on the course and the learning components, because I also think that has the most transfer for people who are situated within a learning center or a tutoring center, or has access to sponsor webinars, workshops, a micro-credential. So these could transfer over to that. So I'll talk about the course revisions, and then also share student-specific quotes from student feedback, both on the type of activities and the actual topics themselves. And then also I have that's at the 1 hour mark, and then we have the 30 minutes remaining for questions, comments, sharing examples from your campus. Also, I have some backup items just in case there is a lull with questions. I can share a few specific examples of what I use in the class sessions. So that's the map for our time together. To share with you the specific context that I am within, at Florida State University, we are a research-intensive public university, and it is predominantly a white institution. We do have a total student enrollment over 44,000 students. We also have an undergraduate population over 32,000 students. We have a graduate student population over 10,000 students. First year's cohort tends to be totaled up throughout the year over or right at or just below 6,000. And then we also have a transfer student cohort throughout the academic year right around 4,000, sometimes a little over, right at, or just below. And to give you context for the encouragement of innovative interventions for students who are on the margins of no longer being enrolled in the university, students are on probation, and pushing innovations to keep their persistence and to keep their retention towards their degree. We have had a university president advocate for the goal of 100% retention. And so we're trying. And as you can see in the last two bullets, I've shared our academic year 23-24 retention, freshman retention rate was 96. And with all that encouragement and also providing resources to innovate and create interventions, we've been able to bump up in the last year to 97% freshman retention. And at the last bullet, you see that we also have those bumps in our graduation rate. And I don't have a 6-year graduation rate, a change in that 6-year rate yet. So we're still right at 86% for those. So that's my context. The purpose for creating programming like this was to fill a gap in our programming for students who have been on probation and then dismissed from the university. Basically, we've had students who have been on probation for multiple semesters, and then eventually they are dismissed. And if they complete an appeals process or go out to a local college and then come back with a higher GPA, transferring in with a higher GPA, we bring them in and we say, okay, do it better. But without any real skill development or getting down to the nitty-gritty of what could help them do it better or do it differently going forward. So that was our gap that identified. And then I reached out to 2 different colleges' dean's offices. So we have the College of Arts and Science and the College of Social Science and Public Policy. Yes, they are the larger colleges on our campus. Yes, I do want to expand to other colleges and deans, working with more deans' offices, but these are the 2 that we've started with and our foundation. Also, the course enrollment, the students within my course, typically they have been dismissed from their college. They've submitted an appeal. They've been readmitted on a conditional basis of attending and passing my class and also increasing their GPA within that first semester back. And sometimes that means they're also trying to get back within their major. So sometimes that consequence of the dismissal is they're no longer within their major, they're no longer enrolled. So we work on both of those. The other element that may be a part of the student's background is they may have already had that typical study strategies improvement course within their undergraduate, their first or second year within the division of undergraduate studies. They may have already participated in one of those types of courses. The other thing that is good to note about characteristics of the student population in my courses is that they have had at least 2 semesters below a 2.0 GPA. And the students in my courses do tend to be juniors and seniors based on their credit hours. That doesn't mean that they're actually able to graduate soon for their major because they need to redo some of their required coursework. But they've been here a while. Also, they tend to be male identifying students, and I highlight that because that's remarkable given the general ratio of our student population. We do have on average 57% female student population and a 43% male identifying student population on our campus in general. So for my course, with a cap of 19 students per section, tends to be more male identifying students, and they also tend to be older, right? They're typically 20 to 23, and I have had, I think, up to 25. So that just gives you a picture of some of the students that I'm working with. Before I dig into the different characteristics that are involved in the course and the overall programming, I wanted to ask you to share in the chat, what are some elements of your current recovery course or programming at your institution? And I have a list of some ideas of things that are pretty typical to share with you, to kind of generate some ideas, give you ideas of reminders of what you might have that you may have forgotten about.
All right. So if your school, if you're familiar with the current recovery course or program at your school, if it has one, you can go ahead and put that in the questions box as a response. And some of the ideas that Samantha has put on the screen are required meetings, certain required courses, and required appeals, time out of matriculation. So not seeing quite yet any responses. It's possible the folks working, oh, here we go, required meeting with coaching, required meetings with academic coach. I feel like that would be a very popular one. Planning to have a $0 credit, $0 tuition course and required academic coaching meetings, required time out of matriculation, SAP appeal, required meetings, required 1 credit, things like that. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of that.
Okay, thank you for, and you can continue adding those into the chat, and I will move forward with components of some influential studies, to the components of influential studies that shaped the design of what I do at FSU. First of all, once I saw this gap, I wanted to see, what do other people do? And so I was looking at studies, published studies that were peer reviewed, and I was specifically wanting to look at large scale. I wanted to avoid, a sample size of 4. I also was focused on college students, because that is very relevant for what I'm planning to do. And also I had some exclusions. I did not include non-study or addiction recovery. I also did not include studies or articles that were COVID specific, because I'm trying to extend past COVID, and my purpose is not dealing specifically within COVID circumstances. Also, I did not include things that were projecting success or predicting success. Just looked at the ones that could offer data and documentation of what they had done and what were some outcomes. Some of the keywords that I used, in case you want to look for these as well, was academic recovery. The trick with that one is to make sure that what you pull up, you're looking at the abstract to identify if it's addiction recovery, because sometimes they will use the same terms. Academic recovery, meaning they're recovering from addiction within an academic setting, or they have addiction recovery program within the institution. So that's something to kind of filter. You have to look closely. Also, probation, college students, I was looking for interventions specifically, whether that was a course or something else. And the things that were challenges in what I found was that they were not specific enough in describing the intervention, or using just vague terminology of what was included. So some of the items that were frequently identified within these studies that were influential to me, but also studies that that I'm not naming here, were connecting students to academic resources. So connecting them to the tutoring options that the university covers, that they have peer mentoring opportunities. There's all kinds of resources within the libraries on campuses, advisors, academic coaches. There were fewer were identifying coaches within the time period that I was looking, but it was growing in later years, like 2023. There were more mentions of college life coaches and then academic coaches. There was emphasis on career center personnel. Also, towards the later years, the health and well-being personnel connected to these student populations, and also counseling personnel being connected. And I think those two were also probably growing from the COVID and post-COVID experience in higher ed, and connecting students to those resources specifically as an outgrowth from that experience. But there were some also that identified bringing in financial guest speakers, and also connecting students with financial resources or financial training on campus. So those were other general items. I wanted to give a shout out to the 4S model, the Schlossberg transition theory. This was something that had multiple articles that were captured in my net, in my filtering when I was doing the lit review. I have not specifically designed anything based on these models. I will say that what I gleaned from these resources were an unconditional positive regard. So Rogers' theory of holding an unconditional positive regard for the student, which is very pronounced skill set within counseling and advising, and especially coaching. So that was one thing that I did pull from that. I also completed a coaching certificate on my campus through my professional development system. And so those were two things that I was able to improve. One of the things that I pulled from that coaching training was to have a responsive presence with students rather than a prescriptive presence. So that's really hard. You know, we have our teacher hat on, we're trying to get through our lesson plan, or we're trying to get through those learning objectives, and we're trying to hit the, indicators or measures of learning outcomes. And so that has always been a challenge, to really balance between those two, to have a presence of just being present, being responsive to what they're sharing about their life and their experience, rather than having a prescriptive session. Okay, so those are things that I gleaned from these types of resources. And then moving into the 3 studies that I'm identifying that were very influential in what I designed. First one is the Goals and Actions, University of California and San Diego. And the author is Nance. The year is 2006. The actual researchers that were involved with it were Singley and Manise. They identified using testimonials with students. So their structure was a series. They structured this intervention as a series of workshops, not a class. They structured it as a series of workshops. They have a lot of the same components. I think they may have housed the workshops within a learning center as well, but that was the framing of it. So these are a series of workshops, and one of the components was to bring in people on campus specifically. I can't remember if they used partners from the community outside of the campus, but I do remember specifically people in working professionals in higher education that came into the class and shared with the students a story about when they were struggling as a student, what was significant for their turnaround. Like, what were the things that worked for them to navigate, you know, that curve, and to set themselves on a path of success and completing their degree and being in the professional position that they have today. So that was their testimonials, the series of workshops. And what stood out about this particular explanation of their intervention was that the people giving the content were counselors. They were counselors from their counseling center, and they had, I guess they rotated, you know, which person was covering which topic, but they had that series of workshops given by counselors, and they focused very specifically on addressing social, behavioral, and psychological functioning. They paired students with a study buddy, and they also made sure that students were very familiar with the Learning Center and the various campus resources, including tutoring, that were available to them. So what really stood out, so everything that's in italics is something that was unique to that study, something that caught my attention. However, the thing that really stood out to me is the 1 whole point increase in the average GPA of the students who participate in this program. So that really made me sit up. I kept rereading it to make sure I was really understanding what they were saying, and it is a 1 whole point increase in the average GPA of the students. So their average GPA before they start with the average GPA at the end of that semester, on average, they had a 1 whole point increase. So that was something that gained my attention. The other thing that was inspirational was the students reported having an increased sense of hope about their own individual situations. And that was a remarkable outcome for the intervention. Okay, the second study that I'm identifying is the Phoenix program at the Indiana University, Leon et al. 2019, if you're looking up that particular study. Now, their probation program was a little different from what I'm familiar with, in that they identified a 3 credit hour course as part of their programming. So they were able to do more within that 3 credit hour because they had more time with the students. But it was also remarkable because typically it's 1 credit hour course from what I've seen. Also, they identified using a strengths-based approach with students and having practice within their course time of practicing life management skills and study skills. So I'm reading that to be help with regulation, self-monitoring, help with time management. So that's what I'm interpreting that is. They also required 2 sessions with an advisor. They also included peer mentorship with former probation students. So that stood out to me. That was not something that I had read in the other studies, and that was something that I tried to replicate. They also had a strong presence of Career Center presentation and a required session at the Career Center. So those were things that were kind of unique for their programming. They were very generous to include a lot of data about their outcomes, and they identified that this course was identified as a requirement for students who were on academic probation. However, students were able to get around it. So I appreciated that honesty. They did include a very large population size of 4,673 students. And I appreciated that they dug into identifying, well, you know, really only 33% of those students who are identified as being on probation really follow through immediately in the next semester to enroll in that required course. They also added a little bit more of a bump of 7% that delayed their enrollment in the course for 1 to 2 semesters. However, they did have 52% of their probation students not complete the course. They did identify that of the students who did enroll in the course were predominantly female students. They were the students that were more likely to enroll immediately and to complete it. The non-takers, so of that 52% who did not complete the course, they tended to be male students. They tended to be first generation. They tended to be non-resident. And so that kind of makes sense. If it's a 3 credit hour and you're paying out-of-state tuition, that might be something that's demotivating. They also tended to be Pell eligible students. They also tended to be Black African American students within the probation student population. They did share an outcome of significant positive correlation between students who completed this course and graduated. So I appreciated their generosity in sharing all of that information about their programming. The last study that I'm identifying is the Engage to Excel, which was conducted at the Western Michigan. I was going to say Mississippi. Western Michigan University. It was called Engage to Excel, and it was specifically designed for re-enrollment and recovery for academically dismissed students. And so that had a distinction in and of its own. So they invited students who were dismissed to participate in this re-enrollment program if they had a GPA between 1.0 and 1.9. So they were selective in who they invited. They also required an essay submission and an interview, and those were not typical requirements of students. Typically, they're filling out a form to appeal to be readmitted or re-enrolled. They also had a separate orientation designed for specifically these students that were selected. They were invited, right? So there's a stratified selection of only students with the 1.0 to 1.9 GPA. And then they also have selected based on the essay submission and the interview. So they set up separate enrollment and a couple of separate courses for these specific students. It seemed very similar to separate courses and separate enrollment that we might have for specific living and learning communities or other student populations. So that's basically what they were trying to replicate, to make everything very specialized for the needs and characteristics of these students. They identified 266 students being enrolled and participating through this program. They also were generous to identify that 46% of those students who participated graduated or remained enrolled. There were also, I think they were also generous in being transparent with 53% of the students not re-enrolling, not returning, or left on their own, or were dismissed again after going through the program. So those are some sobering numbers, but realistic. One of the things that stood out to me about their program was the group counseling format. So they described that as including group check-ins, and they also described that as helping students realize that struggling was normal, and seeking help and getting help from resources on campus was also very normal. Some of the core components that they identified were student engagement on campus. They identified effective engagement was covered within the course. I interpreted that as what you see in the parentheses next to that, emotion and belonging. So emotions that are emotion regulation perhaps, and building belongingness to being at the university, being in higher ed, being within their major perhaps. The other thing was behavioral engagement. I interpret that as self-monitoring, probably time management, maybe some self-monitoring with study strategies. They also identified cognitive engagement. I interpreted that as study strategies, and they identified social engagement being covered within their program. I identified that with student-to-student interaction and maybe more student-faculty interaction, either within the course or maybe specific things outside of the course. Okay, so those were the three that were very influential to my design, and this is what I did for this particular course in programming. I had input from the dean's offices, what was important to them. Also, I set up 14 weeks curriculum. We have a 16-week semester typically, and I designed it for 14 weeks so that they would have the last 2 weeks free to focus on their other courses. It did have required attendance. The dean's offices were completely on board for the intervention to work. They had to actually be there, and so that was okay with them as well. I have weekly in-class activities and outside class reflections. I have guest speakers, career center, counseling center, sports psych, music therapy, and I'll talk about those in more detail. I try to incorporate peer mentoring and testimonies. I've set up a group structure and leaning into that group support structure of the course, rather than like there's teacher at the front of the class and you've got these rows of desks, and I'll share more details about that. I focus on active learning, using role play, using self-assessments, using lots of peer discussion. And I do focus the topics on things that are metacognitive skills and psychological functioning, whether that's emotional regulation, reframing, and some implicit beliefs that students might hold that are very inhibiting. Low self-efficacy, fixed mindset, those are some examples. And I try to promote repeated practice with the self-reflection. I'll share a little more detail about that. And I try to embed opportunity for choice, opportunities for options, opportunities for revision. These are the topics that I try to cover within the semester, within the 14 weeks. So I have, I'm going to move your attention to the fourth topic in the middle column, visualizations and imagery. That's an example of bringing in an outside speaker from sports psych. They come in and they talk with students about a range of techniques that they could use that relate to visualizing and imagery to help them reduce anxiety, whether that's anxiety before a presentation, a competition, a test, any type of situation where they are being assessed or performance is critical. And this person will talk about a range of different techniques to use to help them visualize positive performance, positive assessment, just walking through what that presentation would feel, look, sound, right? So they walk through different techniques that they can apply in the academic setting. Another topic, mindfulness. I had a licensed counselor come in and walk us through 6 different techniques for mindfulness strategies. I'm going to bring your attention to the third column, the fourth item fourth topic that has one asterisk by it. That's the career interest inventory. I tried that for a couple of semesters, got feedback from students. They didn't really care for it. It wasn't really productive for them. They didn't really take a lot away from it. So I dropped it, and I pulled in more things like spending time on resilience, having more time created for the visualization imagery, for things like music therapy, art therapy. And these are techniques that we can bring in, and students will take what they really respond to, what resonates with them, and they'll use the technique. They have full permission to not like a technique. They're completely valid and permitted to give feedback on a technique that just really didn't do anything for them, because something else among the 6 different techniques that we're trying will resonate with them typically. So the last item has the 2 asterisks. I wanted to share a little bit what that looks like, and you could do this within your centers as well. I have a graduation ceremony the last week of our class session, the last week of our semester, for that class. I have a student volunteer to play the graduation march music, so we cue the music. They line up outside the door. I have my faculty robe on, graduation robe on, and I create a certificate that acknowledges their name and their progression towards the degree that they're trying to accomplish. So by successfully completing this class, they are achieving progress towards their goal. And so I announce their name, their bachelor's of science in neuropsychology, and they come in and I shake their hand and I give them the certificate. If they want a picture, we do a picture. And so I do that for each student. And it helps them, they really respond positively to this. It helps inspire them to keep plugging along. It also gives them a little boost for the last 2 weeks of the semester. It helps them connect with, like, okay, this is what I'm trying to accomplish by being here. It also encourages some people to attend their graduation ceremony. Sometimes that's not something that they are planning to do or looking forward to do, or so they have changed their mind about attending the graduation ceremony based on this. And a personal note on this is, when we had our shooting on campus this past April, that was the day of our graduation ceremony for my students. And after making sure that all of them were safe and we had communicated, obviously classes canceled, and letting them know that I will be here the next week. If they want to come in, I will be in our room at our designated, our typical class time, and they can come in and we can do our graduation ceremony if they want to, or they can just come in and just sit with each other, talk with each other. So I went ahead and sent that out, and every single student came the next week. And so we had our graduation ceremony, and we got to sit together and debrief about, a long list of things. So that was really powerful to me. It was convincing to me that there was value, that the students had built, grown a sense of value for what we were doing together. So I wanted to share those stories with you. Okay, so my lessons learned. It was not perfect, and definitely points that were not pretty. I learned to start slower. I had guest speakers at the beginning of our weeks at the beginning of the semester, and that just did not work. So I learned to start slower, build rapport with the students, and then have the guest speakers come in later, like week 6, week 7. So that was a change. I also improved the peer mentor process. I tried recruiting volunteers for students who had previously been on academic probation and had since come off of probation and were doing well within their major and had the required GPA, etc. I tried doing that and it did not work. It imploded. It was very much not pretty. So what I switched to is using peer mentors from staff at the tutor center. So I have access to study skills tutors who work at the ACE Center for the Academic Center for Excellence on my campus, and I paired them, or actually they have the choice. This is another layer of choice. They have the choice to choose the student that they want to work with as their study buddy, their one of the 2 required meetings for the semester. So that was a layer of choice. It was also an improvement because I had access to people that had a set schedule. And so there was regularity, consistency, stability. So all of those things mattered. And so that was the change for me. I also changed the room that I was in, right? Because in order to do that group format, I'm trying to circle around and we're trying to talk, see each other eye to eye, face to face, and circle around. So I started requesting rooms that had the modular furniture, the furniture on wheels, so we could configure it the way we wanted it. I also emphasized just more focus on the experience and the practice within our time together. And offering repeated practice with the self-reflection and self-monitoring. So that's in the reflection part. So we have our class activity, everything's done. They upload whatever we're working on within our class, they get points for that. And then they have a couple of reflection prompts afterwards that are related to that topic. In that reflection, we are going back and forth. I'm giving them in-depth feedback, asking questions, follow-ups, and then they respond to me. And so I've learned to lean more into that. The other thing is to increase the students' interactions with each other because they build a bond. They form friendships that extend past this class, and they support each other. And the support coming from a peer is much stronger, it's more resonating coming from them from me. Continue the in-depth feedback. And the other thing that I continue to learn to do is to weave the topics. So maybe we talked about skills to build resilience in week 1. When I'm covering growth mindset or I'm covering self-care, I will link those topics to each other. Remember when we talked about these skills and resilience? Maybe even bring up the slide. This is very much connected to self-efficacy, or this is very much connected with productive coping skills, or this is very much connected with what we're talking about with self-care. And so I am weaving those together throughout the weeks. I'm struggling with planning to be resilient in the content with student absences. So I try my best to do one-on-one makeup attendance sessions, and that's always a challenge. I will share a specific revision with conflict management is one of the topics that we cover in the course, and I have a abbreviated self assessment that they do, and they answer the questions and they calculate the total and they come up with a score for the 5 different approaches to conflict: competitive, collaborative, compromising, avoiding, and accommodating. And so we talk about the surprises they have with that, their high scores, their low scores, the pros and cons of each approach. We talk about context or situational context for using each of the approaches. We talk about where do they think they started to form this approach to conflict. Typically, it goes back to families, stories within their family. And then we talk about that, of course, how productive that is. So I'll give you an example of avoidant. We talk about an avoidant approach. They wanted to have how-tos, both avoidant and competitive. Avoidant in that, how do I stay in a situation that is very uncomfortable for me, and it's a conflict, but it's with like a family, a significant other, faculty. How do I stay present? Like, what can I say? Like, help me. Basically, their feedback was, help me do it differently. Like, what's a strategy to use? So I started adding that at the end of our conflict management topic. The other one was competitive. They started to realize that although speaking your mind, being authoritative with what you think, what you believe, completely valid. However, consider the intent versus the impact. And so we would talk about that difference in how we say it and what we say can impact the person that we're talking to. So those are things that I had to add to based on their feedback on the assignments. Okay, so I want to share student feedback with you. This first slide is feedback about using the active learning strategies, what they refer to as activities, and then also feedback about using reflection. So using those two methods in the course. I specifically appreciate all the feedback, but the fourth comment from this student that communicated practicing with these activities, like practicing the different techniques, that really helped this student tap into their emotions. They're more self-aware of what the emotions are that they're experiencing, and then also helping them, okay, once I realize this, now how do I learn how to operate differently? Like, so I'm feeling this, now that I'm aware of this, now I understand why I respond in this like habitual, I have this habit or this pattern of responding in this way. So that's what they're referring to here. And then I'll share the next slide. This is specific to students' takeaways for a specific topic in the course. So we do have some that are about personal growth, practicing the exercises. The ones that are give me a lot of satisfaction are the ones towards the bottom. Becoming aware that I come across as confrontational and being open to changing that, right? So making more time to care for themselves, identifying different forms of self-care. Also, that they believe that they are capable, right? The self-efficacy, believing that they are capable of doing or learning something, so therefore they will try. And then feeding off that, we're always focusing on progress, not perfection. Progress, not perfection. And so to see that coming back in the key takeaway for students, that they're feeding off these small wins until they can achieve that big goal. So these are from the students. And I am transitioning to share recommended readings, things that, in addition to the studies that I talked about earlier, I'm sharing these books with you to say that I have gleaned something from these books, an activity, an idea, a sensitivity to a student characteristic, or even changes to language that I use. So these have been instrumental for me. And then I have another book that I'm going to show you on the next page, on the next slide. This one, the Spark of Learning, has been very inspirational in this year. So this is one that's been very timely in the last 2 semesters. And I want to ask you to share with all the other participants, what are some reading recommendations that you have that we can share, as we share the slides going out to everyone.
All right, so if anybody has any reading recommendations, you can put that in the questions box and we will read those aloud. In the meantime, I just want to say I loved those quotes from students about what they learned. I thought that was lovely. I hope that those were lessons that they took with them after they completed the program. And the story about the graduation ceremony got me too.
Yeah.
So that was lovely. All right, so I am waiting to see if we get any recommendations. We have had a couple of questions come in, so
Okay.
we will take those in a moment, but let's see if we're getting any recommendations in here. Oh, nope, that's a question, no problem. We'll mark that. And just to let everyone know, we are going to be able to provide the slides from this presentation, so we will include a link to that when we send out the recording. All right, I'm seeing, okay, so one recommendation is Awe, the New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Can Transform Your Life.
Okay.
What the Best College Teachers Do. Coaching
Yeah.
Students with Executive Skills Deficits by Dawson and Guare, G-U-A-R-E. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, sorry. But thank you, Amy, for that one. And I can make a list of these as well for folks who would like to read these later and don't want to have to like type while I'm speaking.
Right.
So I will include a link or a document with the titles here. All right. If we get any more, I'll let you know. But it looks like those are the main ones we have so far.
There was another one that I learned, that I heard about at a conference, and it's a Thrive You. I've read that, and it's helped me, especially working with first-year students.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been a while since I've read that kind of literature, being a few years out
Right?
of
Yeah,
higher
yeah.
ed, but I think that's all I think that's all we have for right now.
Yeah, and we're at the 1 hour mark, so we knew that we would have people that might be using their lunch hour and need to go. So
yeah, would you like to go into questions, because we have had a few?
yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
awesome. So Alyssa asks, was the 3-credit course for the Phoenix program in person or online?
I believe it was in person.
Okay. And Jeff wants to know, did IU delineate the retention rates of those 3 populations, which are immediate versus late versus not complete?
Ask that again.
Did IU delineate the retention rates of those 3 populations, which are
No.
immediate versus late versus? They did not. Okay.
Yeah, it was only related to course, if they completed the course and graduated. That was the only one that I remember.
Only one that they, yep. Brittany wants to know if you happen to know if the Engage to Excel course at Western Michigan University was tuition free.
I do not know.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen it vary. So I've seen also those first year, those FYE courses can be free sometimes too, or at least they just don't go on their GPA or something.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
yeah.
know for us, there are times when we can waive it. We can use the 0 credit hour. And so they only have just minimal fees, and they don't have a tuition for the course.
Gotcha.
So there are special circumstances that we can do that as well.
Yeah. So Alyssa asks, I'm intrigued by requiring a course. How do you work around the FERPA concern of revealing the students who are on probation to other students? That's been the main thing that holds us to hold us back from doing group advising to try to reach more students.
Well, I've been asked this question before about revealing to the students in my course that everyone had been academically dismissed, and I don't. They know that it's a, excuse me, they know that it's a course that I have pitched to the dean's offices, and that the dean's offices from their colleges are very innovative and progressive, and so they were identifying these students. They believe they believe that they can be successful, and they believe in the content of the course, and so they have invited them, to participate in this in addition to their re-enrollment. So what I say is that everyone was selected by their dean's office to participate. I don't go into why or how or none of those details, but that this was a selected program, that not everyone has access to it. They will reveal within our talking. They will talk about failing a course, or that if they talk about their goals, they're setting goals, and they talk about that with a partner, they might reveal in that goal setting chat that they're trying to get their their GPA above blah 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 blah. But we don't focus on how they got there. We focus on what are the skills that they can develop from these these sessions to do it better, differently going forward.
Right.
I hope that helps. And with FERPA, we have, with our students that are on probation, they are we do have courses set up for students that are on probation within the Division of Undergraduate Studies.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't talk about their GPAs to each other or anything like that. Again, it's a study skills course, a study success course, etc.
Yeah.
I hope that
And I think,
helps.
yeah, well, I think like I've seen schools interpret FERPA in some really broad to narrow ways, in like a variety of ways. So I think that if I think that like really examining like, because tutoring can be a situation where the student has, where the tutor, the peer tutor has access to um, student information in under certain circumstances, and then like of course SI leaders and things like that. So I think that there are definitely ways to like kind of make sure that the tutor like has like the right permissions to access that information, and that they're trained to keep it confidential.
Yes, that
Brittany,
we do.
yes.
That is true. All of my staff sign a non-disclosure
Yeah,
agreement,
that's important.
and then we have a difference in permissions for the databases that they use for the undergraduate peer tutors versus the graduate student
Yeah,
tutors.
of course. Brittany asks, have you instructed your course through a hybrid or online modality?
No, but Caroline Brody has created an online, I think she created an online course based on content that I've shown here, and also other content that she's pulled in. And she created an online course for Georgetown University. So if that's of interest, I can contact her, Rachel, and see if she would be willing to like include her name or information with the distribution of slides.
Yeah, if Brittany or anyone else is interested, let us know in the questions box, and we will, Samantha can reach out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also Auburn University, Dr. Samantha Ansley, I think they're working towards something like that, because they have a policy where students are not, they're not allowed to return to the university for a set amount of time if they have had academic dismissal.
Mm.
So they're trying to come up with ideas of how do we help these students
Yeah. How do you keep
while
them
they're just out there.
engaged? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tricky. Um, Natasha asks, thank you so much for sharing this knowledge with us. I implemented a very similar program this semester. However, because it was not mandatory, students stopped attending. How would you encourage students to attend if, assuming you can't or don't or choose not to make it mandatory?
That's tough because
Hmm.
they're not coming frequently enough to build the value. Um, you might want to consider having a hybrid where they could Zoom in. Maybe consider also talking with the dean's office or dean's discretionary funds if there's things that they could build into that time, like having a meal together or coffee together or something that you could build that into that session that was special.
Hmm.
Um, I, I I know that students are oftentimes running from thing to thing to thing, and oftentimes they're coming from work to the class session or going from the session to work. And so I will bring in, individually packaged snacks like cheese crackers or, blow pops. And that's one thing that I ask them to email me the first week of classes, so they have my email address. And they send something and I respond to them, but I ask them to give me their top 3 favorite candies. And I try to, buy some of those at a dollar store and I bring those in. So that's just a nice little, like, loosens everyone up. We're in that,
Yeah.
circle format. We're talking, we're sharing, we have a, blow pop, whatever. And I'll say the other thing that I do is I don't I always greet students positively when they come in the door, no matter when they came in the door.
Hmm.
So we have this thing called we made it past the threshold. So if they get past that threshold of that classroom, it's a win. Even if it was 20 minutes late, and I will confess it has taken some self-restraint at times. But I try to have that unconditional positive regard and give them the W for getting away from wherever they were. That was a more attractive, easier thing to do, and bringing themselves into the classroom to meet face to face.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm speaking from experience. It is tough, especially when you're like busy yourself, and um,
Yes.
but I agree. It's completely
Or
necessary.
you get that email afterwards every time they say, "Did I miss anything?
Right. Um,
Anything important?"
well, this leads, I think, pretty well into this next question by Jean, who just kind of is curious about your thoughts on the idea that these interventions, one of the most valuable things about them is awareness by the student that there is someone invested in their success. So I don't know if you're able to speak to that.
Yes. One of the things, uh, an example, is definitely me as an instructor, and the academic recovery peer mentors that are on my staff. I also layer in choice and options for them. One, they have profiles of the recovery mentors that they can choose who they want to meet with, but also they could choose to continue meeting with their existing college life coach or academic coach or personal counselor. So if they already have a relationship with someone like that, that's it's only been campus-based so far. I haven't had a situation outside of campus. I definitely am open to using their verified meetings with that person that they have an existing relationship with, and use that for points. I give points for those meetings. I use that as points towards the course grade. So that's another example of expanding the circle of people who are invested in them, and also it reduces the weight of having other programs or classes that you're required to have 2 meetings over here, 2 meetings with the career center, 2 meetings with your advisor, 2 meetings with the peer mentor, and so if I can reduce some of that for them, and we're a pretty close community, we know that we're basically focused on the same goals
Right.
for these students, right? And so
Yeah.
I know them, and so it's pretty easy to verify, like, did so and so meet with you on Thursday? Yes. Or they just send me a quick email, and so it gives them, they already have an existing relationship. It's less stressful for them. I am also layering in choice and options.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are still getting questions in here. We're going to get to as many as we can.
Okay.
This next one should be pretty easy. Monique asks, is the academic recovery course offered every fall and spring? And if so, how many sections are offered each semester?
Every semester, fall, spring, and summer. And right now it's 1 section.
All right.
And I'll tell you, I have students that are required by the deans to enroll. And if they're really struggling with attending that semester, rather than giving an F, I have worked with the student and with the dean's office and just say, you know what, why don't we just enroll in the summer? Why don't we just enroll you in the fall? And so they have choice in that as well, and they feel like they have a little bit more control. And it's not that immediate enrollment like one of the other programs talked about, but it's a 1 or 2 semester delay. So I do work with that. I still have students that are required to be there, and they wind up taking a mental health or medical or some other withdrawal, and they are no longer in the course. The majority of the students pass, but I have had students who just never show up, never communicate, never work with me and or their dean's office, and ultimately they have an F, and ultimately they do become dismissed again.
Yeah.
So it's across the board. What I'm trying to say is it's not a silver bullet. Mm-hmm. It's an improvement.
Yeah, and there's just the 1 section offered.
1 section every semester.
Yeah. Okay, there was a follow-up question to that, but if it's just 1 course, Jay wants to know what courses students repeat the most and why, if you're aware of that at your institution.
Oh, at my institution, yeah. Okay, so that's. I'm going to switch gears away from the course and talk about our top 25 high DFW courses. D's, F's, drops, and withdrawals. So they do tend to be high enrollment classes. They do tend to be STEM courses, high enrollment. So if you're, trying to learn biology with 900 other students, that has a higher, drop rate. I think you're asking me why do I think that happens. I think there's a kind of a transition, a shock, an academic shock, if you will, coming from the K-12 system mm-hmm. into the university system, where you do have these high enrollment situations. You're in a lecture hall for your course. You feel very anonymous. You probably feel very disconnected from the instructor, the TAs, etc. There's not a lot of accountability for tapping into the infrastructure of study support
Mm-hmm.
So there's no real monitoring of, well, did you attend the study group? Did you attend the, content specific tutor,
Mm-hmm.
the embedded tutor? Like, there's all kinds of strategies that we come up with. The SI programming. So there's not a lot of monitoring of that.
Yeah.
And that's one part of it. I think that they have an increased volume of content, an increased pace of learning the content, and a whole lot of that's just turned over to their own regulating, monitoring, managing.
Yeah.
And those are all new skills. They might have some of those skills. Obviously, they
Mm-hmm.
did well in high school. They wouldn't be in your university for a lot of universities.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about an advanced set of skills because
Yeah.
they're also, for us, we're a residential school. They're also learning how to maybe do their own laundry, figure out their own food,
I
regulate their own sleep time. So it's a lot of
I was gonna
transition.
say, yeah, I was gonna say like that transition from having your parents checking your homework to realizing like nobody's checking your homework. It made me have a sudden flashback to something I haven't thought about in years, which is freshman year. uh, there was a friend in my like dorm friend group who wasn't getting up in time for a morning class that she had, and she tasked us with like banging on her door and waking her up because her mom wasn't there to do it. And I think that was like, we were all like little 18-year-olds, but I think that was a
Yeah.
wake up call of like nobody can make you do the work but you. And I think the reasons that students fail are going to look very different at
Mhm.
a 4-year residential university than like a 2-year, where I think the reasons are probably a little bit different. Um,
Yeah, because some of them have a much higher workload employment
yeah,
that they
right.
have to
They
self-support,
they're motivated, but they have other obstacles. Like
right?
yeah,
Or they have dependents, or yeah.
yeah. So Karen says, we offer a 1-credit course designed to support students who are readmitted with a GPA below 2.0. However, any student who feels they could benefit from additional academic guidance is welcome to take the course. We've been noticing some issues with attendance, and then it wants to know if you've encountered that issue and what strategies you found effective in addressing it. I think we've already touched on some of that. So, but if you had
Attendance
any
is always an issue.
additional, yeah,
Yeah, even when it's required, it's an issue.
yeah. Monique says, what is the grading method for the course? Is it pass fail, or do students earn a grade that will be calculated into their GPA?
They have a grade that's calculated into their GPA. Yeah.
Yeah. And then and we had another person ask that as well. I am seeing folks saying that they are interested in the best practices for engaging hybrid or online students. So yeah, if you want to send me that, I can pass that along to folks.
Yeah, I'll contact Carolyn Brody and see if what she could share from the course that she created for Georgetown University.
Hmm.
Okay.
Gina asks, awesome. Gina asks, if students are first generation, do you check to be sure that they are connected to programs like TRIO? And I would assume if they are eligible for other resources like veterans offices and things like that.
Yes, we do have a very strong programming at Florida State University specifically for first generation students.
Hmm.
And
I
it's
think that's,
multiple
yeah,
programs. It's not just
yeah.
one, it's like 6.
I think that's the way to do it. I've worked in schools that are very siloed, where like we were scared of sharing our students and our
Mhm.
staff and our strategies. And other schools where sharing is the only way for success. So I'm very glad to hear that, of course. And I
Yes,
think
but
it's changing a lot too.
and I am able to see within our system if that student is a member of the programming, and then if I'm struggling with getting contact with the student, like high absences or whatever, then I can reach out to their leaders
Yeah,
for support to contact the student, and maybe they have a relationship and I'm just a stranger to
yeah,
them, and so they might respond to that program leader that they have a relationship relationship with before they respond to me. And that's okay. We'll just use that.
Yeah. Amy wants to know, how big is the class?
It's capped at 19. I've never had it start at 19 or end at 19. It's typically like 12. Yeah.
Natalie asks, what do prospective participant interviews ask?
I don't have interviews for
Okay.
my course, so I'm not sure what that program
Okay.
did for theirs.
Another program. Okay.
Yeah.
And
The
Brittany
article
asks,
might,
yeah.
definitely go back to the article and see if they highlight any of that, but I don't remember.
Okay. Apologies for the mix up on my end there. Brittany asks, would you be willing to share your conflict resolution assessment?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I have an attribution. I acknowledge where I borrowed and then abbreviated. It's the I think it's North Central Florida.
Okay.
North Florida. Yeah, so they have an entire program center focused on conflict resolution, and so I adapted one of their tools. And I think Valdosta State University in Georgia also has a conflict resolution center, and they have instruments on their websites too.
Awesome.
But yes, I can do that.
Well, we are almost at time, and that's perfect because that is the last question that we had. Some really great questions from everyone. I think then, Samantha, we are good to close out if we've gotten through everything. That was so wonderful. Thank you everybody for your participation and for staying. As I said, we will be sending out the recording, and we will also send out those supplemental materials. And thank you, Dr. Tackett, for your time today. It was so lovely to be hosting your presentation. And I hope, again, everybody, we will have our next webinar in February. Keep an eye out for that. And I hope everybody has a great rest of your day and a great rest of the year. Take care, everyone.